Top 10 Best Horror Movies. Horror is one of the most popular genres in the history of cinema and has gathered thousands of fans around the world. However, it has been declining with the passage of time, with few films that are actually scary, which is why, right now, we present the top 10 best horror films. Number 10. Insidious, 2010. Directed by James Wang, this film tells the story of the Lamberts, a family that moves to a new house, but they soon discover that they have become victims of paranormal phenomena, which they try to cope with until the youngest son of the married couple, Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne, falls into a coma and they are convinced that the child's state has to do with devilish beings. They decide to call Elise, Lin Shaye, a medium who warns them that the soul of their son resides in the world of the dead and that it is essential to remove him from the place before other spirits take over his body. For critics, this director has managed to claim horror, because after so many sequels in which gore predominates but nothing is really scary, Wang has sought to use the apparitions and shocking images that generate suspense, anxiety, and fear in the viewer. It should be noted that this movie is just the beginning of a saga set in a universe full of demons, mediums, and researchers of the paranormal that continues with Insidious 2, 3, and 4, the last key in which we know the past of Elise. Number 9. 28 Days Later, 2003. A zombie movie could not be missed in this top, but it's not about the typical story full of blood and dismemberment. Instead, it's the story of Jim, Cillian Murphy, a young man who wakes up alone in the hospital, very similar to what happened to Rick from The Walking Dead, 28 days after a global epidemic that transforms people into undead. So he will have to find a way to survive alongside Selena, Naomi Harris, Hannah, Megan Burns, and Frank, Brendan Gleeson, until they reach a military base where they will be safe, but they do not know what awaits them once they get there. Directed by Englishman Danny Boyle, despite the fact that this film had a low budget, it became an international success, and against all odds, surprised critics with its history, shots, and soundtrack. It also won awards such as the Saturn Award for Best Horror Film, the European Film Award for Best Cinematographer, the Reel Award for Best Breakthrough Performance, and the Empire Award for Best British Film. Number 8. Get Out, 2017. Winner of the Spirit Award for Best Film, the Oscar Award for Best Original Screenplay, and Best Emerging Star for Daniel Kaluuya at the BAFTA Awards, this psychological horror film has a lot to offer. This film, directed by Jordan Peele, tells the story of Chris, a young African-American who decides to spend a weekend in his sweetheart Rose's mansion. But this is not the only terrifying thing, because when he gets there, he notices some weird behavior of both the family and the staff that works there, and little by little discovers that everything was a trap and he must find a way to escape, not only from that place, but the control exercised over it. For the critics, this is undoubtedly a good proposal that breaks with the standards of a typical horror movie, with a good atmosphere, photographic proposal, soundtrack, and the incredible performances not only of the Oscar nominee for Best Actor Daniel Kaluuya, who portrays confusion and mystery fantastically, but also because of Allison Williams, Catherine Keener, Bradley Whitford, and Caleb Landry Jones. Number 7. The Witch, 2015. It is very likely that this film disturbed many viewers because of the history, scenarios, and terrifying scenes. But above all, because it takes us back to old childhood fears of ghosts, or in this case, witches. This is the first film directed by Robert Eggers and starring Anya Taylor-Joy. It tells the story of a 17th century Puritan family, consisting of a couple and their 5 children, exiled because of a sin they committed, so they will be forced to live in the limits of the forest to start a new life. But everything changes with the sudden disappearance of the smallest member of the family. This will lead the family to break apart little by little, until finally, they yield to the misfortunes generated because of their religious fanaticism and an evil being that lives in the forest. For some viewers, it may seem a slow pace. However, others appreciate it for the suspense and uncertainty that it manages to create. Number 6. It, 2017. Despite the bad omens for thousands of fans of the miniseries of the year 1990 that bears the same name, this film managed to surpass the expectations of the spectators and satisfy the critics. Directed by Argentinian Andres Busieri, this story tells how a group of kids nicknamed the Losers Club that lives in the town of Derry managed to forge a great friendship as a result of a series of strange events and the appearance of a malignant entity that harasses them and can take the form of the worst nightmares, including an all-time favorite, Pennywise the Clown. Its success is not only because its premiere broke box office records and managed to raise about $500 million worldwide, but also due to its cast, who were acclaimed by the critics. Starred by Bill Skarsgård, Finn Wolfhard of Stranger Things, Sophia Lillis of 37, Jaden Lieberher of The Confirmation, Wyatt Olaf of Guardians of the Galaxy, Chosen Jacobs, Jaron Ray Taylor, and Jack Grazer of Tales of Halloween. Thanks to the fact that the film will have a sequel based on the adult version of the main characters, more scenes from the book have been included, which makes it more terrifying and raw, but without making it over the top or morbid. Number 5. The Prophecy, 1976. This film was directed by Richard Donner. It is considered a cult movie, so every fan of horror should watch it. This film tells the story of Robert Thorne, played by Gregory Peck, a diplomat who cheats on his wife Catherine, Lee Remick, who has just lost her son and gives her a baby he just adopted that same night, making her believe that the baby is hers. Everything seems to be working fine in the life of this lovely couple and their beautiful son Damien, but things begin to change when the nanny commits suicide during the child's birthday, but not before shouting, "This is for you, Damien!"
It's all for you!
This strange event is followed by a series of misfortunes and deaths throughout the story, where Damien is revealed to be the Antichrist on Earth. One of the best horror films of all time, winner of an Academy Award for Best Soundtrack with Ave Santi. This was the beginning of a terrifying trilogy, Damien's Curse in 1978 and Damien's End in 1981. Number 4. Rosemary's Baby, 1968. Directed by Roman Polanski, who became obsessed with his direction and being the scriptwriter having the project in his hands. Once he got it, he finished the script in just 30 days. This film tells the story of a couple, the Woodhouses, who, despite being warned by a friend, decide to move into a supposedly cursed building near Central Park. Once there, they become friends with Minnie, Ruth Gordon, and Roman Castevet, two neighbors who always pay attention to them. Shortly after, the couple decides to have a child, and everything would have gone well had it not been for the fact that the only thing that Rosemary, Mia Farrow, remembers from the night of conception is that a devilish creature was on her and left marks all over her body. It is told visually in such a way that you do not know if the strange events are Rosemary's hallucinations in the wake of her pregnancy, or if there really is a satanic sect behind her that wants her to beget the son of the devil. The success of the film was such that it raised about $34 million, and all the specialized press praised this film with psychological terror with simple scenes and great performances. Even Truman Capote declared himself a fan of this story. Number 3. The Shining, 1980. This is the story of Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson, a writer who moves temporarily with his wife, Shelley Duvall, and his son, Danny Torrance, to the Overlook Hotel in Colorado. During the winter season, they are the only residents of the place, which remains closed to other visitors, and they are responsible for its maintenance. Everything goes relatively well until little Danny, who has supernatural powers, begins to have paranormal visions, and his father is the victim of disturbing appearances and personality changes. Directed by Kubrick and based on the novel by Stephen King, this film was very well received by the public, especially because of the way it generates suspense and fear out of the ordinary. Few films would disturb you as much as the scene of a child on his tricycle rolling through the corridors of a hotel. Despite the negative reviews and the nominations of Kubrick and Duvall to the Razzie Awards for Worst Leading Actress and Worst Director, the film managed to raise nearly $100 million. Number 2. Psycho, 1960. It is considered one of the best Alfred Hitchcock films, and ironically, it was made in the middle of the director's financial crisis. because after the failure that international intrigue turned out to be, very few wanted to invest in it. For this reason, he had to use his own means, such as mortgaging his own house, to make this film based on Robert Bloch's homonymous novel inspired by serial killer Ed Gein. The story is about a secretary, Marion Crane, played by Janet Leigh, who after stealing $40,000 from the company where she worked to support herself and her boyfriend Sam, John Gavin, leaves the city, and after hours of traveling, she stays in a roadside motel, where she will be serviced by the young Norman Bates, Anthony Perkins, who lives next door with his mother. This film was recorded in black and white and in sets to reduce costs and give a more disturbing atmosphere. It was the winner of a Golden Globe Award for Best Supporting Actress and the Edgar Award for Best Screenplay. And before presenting our #1 spot, here are some honorable mentions of these horror films that gave us nightmares. Friday the 13th, 1980. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. The Others, 2001. Poltergeist, 1982. And finally, in first place we have The Exorcist, 1973. Directed by William Friedkin and based on a book with the same name written by William Peter Blatty, who was also responsible for adapting the script. The story centers around Reagan McNeil, played by Linda Blair, a 12-year-old girl who lives with her mother Chris, Ellen Burstyn, in Washington. One day, the girl finds a board game which turns out to be the Ouija board, and everything starts to change for her and her friends. She begins to be the victim of paranormal activities. Her attitude becomes violent, she hurls insults, and performs unworthy and indecent acts for a girl of her age. Chris, desperate from seeing her daughter in such a deplorable state, scars, pallor, open wounds, a demonic voice, and after having undergone fruitless medical examinations, decides to contact Father Karras, Jason Miller, who after being convinced that it really could be an infernal possession, asks the church for permission and helped by Father Marin is ready to start the exorcism. Undoubtedly a film with a shocking ending, cataloged as one of the most influential in the history of cinema that clearly raises the question between good and evil. The film won numerous awards. It had 10 Oscar nominations, of which it won 2, one for Best Adapted Script and another for Best Soundtrack. How can we forget the famous Tubular Bells? In addition, it also won Golden Globes for Best Film Drama, Best Script, Best Director, and Best Supporting Actress. What did you think of this top? With these movies, you'll have sleepless nights guaranteed. Don't forget to comment if you already saw one of these movies and which one you liked the most. Like the video, subscribe, and share it. Until next time.